my name's Hayden, and I'm the Game Master for the Thrift Shop Wizards YouTube channel. This is the first in a series of videos breaking down and explaining the rules of the tabletop RPG Savage Worlds. For the purpose of these videos, I'm going to be using Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, the most recent version of the game. These videos assume you already understand the basic concept of a tabletop RPG, so if you don't know how they work in a more general sense, it's best to familiarize yourself with the idea first. To start things off, we're going to begin with building yourself a character, because you can't properly get into the action and adventure of a Savage Worlds game without a means of interacting with the world around you. There are two types of characters running around the various distant lands, magical realms, and alien planets of Savage Worlds: extras and wildcards. Extras are exactly what they sound like: cannon fodder, common monsters, generic NPCs within the world. Extras are unimportant to the plot typically, and mostly exist to populate the world with people and things to interact with. Things like weaker monsters, nameless thugs, shopkeeps, and the random city guards peppered around the world all count as extras. Now, wildcards, on the other hand, have little more weight in the world. Their actions have consequences that cause an impact in the world around them. They're tougher, more fleshed out, have more presence in the story. Wildcards are important to the world or story at hand. The bigger, nastier monsters, beasts that might be part of a local legend, leaders of a gang, famous figures within the world, those are all wildcards. The core distinction here is that they've got some importance or notoriety. Usually they have more backstory to work with. Local sheriff of a random frontier town might not be a wildcard, but Marshall Johnson, sheriff of the town of Deadwood, who famously ran the bandits plaguing the area out of town, is. Now let's really get into the meat of character creation and how it works. First off, all player characters are going to be wildcards, so you don't have to worry too much on that front. Much like in other tabletop RPGs, you start with a character concept, just a rough idea of what you want to play. You could play a wandering gunslinger going wherever life leads him, or a shotgun-toting priest on a holy mission to protect his congregation from the undead. Or, depending on the setting, you may even just play a convenience store clerk who just got dragged in the middle of a fight against some supernatural horror. Unlike a lot of other systems, Savage Worlds doesn't have any concrete player classes. You're free to combine your skills and stats however you feel like, so there's a lot of freedom in what you do. Once you have your core concept, the next step, if the setting you're playing allows it, is to select your player race. Each race will have their own unique stats and specializations. Humans get a free edge to add to their character sheet, more on that later. Androids don't have to breathe and get bonuses to overcome being shaken. Dwarves have low light vision and are a bit more hardy by nature, so on. Each race also has their own drawbacks to consider, so read through the stats of each and weigh the pros and cons of each race before you make a decision. The Savage Worlds core rulebook has tools in place to build player races from the ground up as well, so any game masters out there itching for more content than the book offers, feel free to mess around with those lists and make something that suits the world you're playing. So, now you have a character concept and a race. Here's where stuff has potential to get interesting. Savage Worlds has a whole list of special character details known as hindrances, and they basically make flaws for your character. Anything from being bad with machines, having a death wish, maybe some strict moral code that you can't break away from, or just being impulsive. Those are all hindrances. A lot of these kind of require you to roleplay your character as having those flaws, but some impart actual mechanical detriments as well. Hindrances are a fast way to add some nuance and character flaw to an otherwise flat character, so I know this sounds like a bad idea. Most of them have compelling characterization reasons for taking them, but it seems like there's no real concrete benefit to putting one down on your character sheet. After all, why do you want to hamstring your character like this for no reason? Well, there is a simple answer. Edges. Edges are sort of perks that you add to your character sheet. They impart special mechanical effects and bonuses that further let you customize your character and give them special strengths to suit your playstyle. Add a little more mechanical depth to your basic character concept. There are two main ways to get edges for your character: leveling up and taking hindrances. You see, all those hindrances have little tags next to their name that specify they're either minor or major. A major hindrance taken at character creation will net you 1 point, and a major is worth 2. You can take up to 3 hindrances in any combination of minor and major that you want. You can choose to take more of them after that, but they don't give you any extra points. The points you get from hindrances let you do a few different things. You can spend 2 points to buy an edge that you meet the requirements for, or to raise one of your core attributes by 1 level. You can also spend just 1 point to raise a skill of your choice by 1 level, or to give yourself more money to start the adventure with. Taking these little bonuses from your hindrances serves as a little reward for willingly giving yourself character flaws or limitations to work around, by giving you a little bit of an advantage in certain situations. So now you've got the framework of a character and a general idea of what they're like. Now we're going to start work on the stuff you'll be using as the basis for all of the actual gameplay. Attributes and skills. Every character in the world has 5 main attributes. Agility represents how light on your feet and dexterous you are. Smarts represents your raw intelligence and how quickly you can think on your feet. Spirit is your willpower, self-confidence, mental fortitude. Strength is the measure of your actual physical fitness and power, and then there's Vigor, which is more endurance, ability to resist poisons, diseases, handle taking a beating. When you first begin statting your character, you have 5 points to spend on your attributes. These points will raise an attribute by 1 level. Every level you raise an attribute will increase the die type by 1 step. All your attributes start at a D4, unless your chosen race says otherwise, and so raising a skill by 1 level would make it a D6, 2 levels a D8, 3 a D10, and so on to a maximum of D12. After you've allotted all your points for attributes, it's time to choose your skills. There are too many skills to list, and every setting or expansion for the game includes new, unique ones. So we're only going to discuss the system for selecting them and the 5 core skills. You start with a D4 in all of your core skills. That'd be Athletics, Common Knowledge, Notice, Persuasion, and Stealth. In addition to those 4 skills being D4s by default, you have an additional 12 points after that to level up your skills in any configuration you choose, following the same rules as leveling up your attributes. There is one important thing to note, though. Skills will have an associated attribute next to them. Leveling up a skill costs 1 point per die type until you reach the same level as the associated trait. After that, they cost double. So, for example, let's say you've got a D8 in Agility and you want a D10 in the Athletics skill. You level up the skill from a D6 to a D8, that'd cost 1 point. But leveling up the D8 to a D10 would cost 2 points. These skills and attributes determine what you're capable of doing and kind of set up your odds for success at a given task. So it's important to consider what you want your character to excel at and what they might not have much experience with. Okay, by this point you should have your character concept a little more fleshed out. We've picked a race, we've decided on character flaws with the hindrances, you've gotten a leg up on the competition with your edges, and we've distributed the points for your attributes, chosen all your skills. Well, what's left? Not much, as it turns out. You'll have to select your starting gear and figure out your derived statistics. Purchasing gear is really simple, but the stuff you can get is so wildly varied and determined by the world you're playing that I can't possibly cover all of it here. When you start making a character, your game master will tell you how much money you have, and the specific setting book you're using will detail how much each given item costs, and give you any specific stats for weapons and other gear. Your derived statistics, though, are a bit more complicated. You've got a few different ones to keep track of. So pace is how fast you can move in a turn of combat or some other tactical situation. Your character's default pace is to move 6 inches on the board per turn, and this can be modified by various things, including your injuries, racial penalties, hindrances, what sort of vehicle you're riding in, so on and so forth. Parry is your ability to dodge or redirect melee attacks aimed at you in a fight. Your parry is 2, plus half the value of your fighting skill's die type, by default. It can be modified by the gear you're wearing or the weapons you wield, as well as certain edges. Now, size is exactly what it sounds like. It's literally how big or how small your character is in relation to the average human. Being smaller makes you a little harder to hit, but it means you also can't take a hit quite as well. Being bigger means you're easier to hit, but a little tougher for it too. The default size is 0, and it can be modified by edges, hindrances, or racial stats. Now, toughness is the threshold of damage you're able to take before it causes actual harm. Toughness is 2 plus half of your vigor die value, and it can be increased by wearing armor. We'll go over armor a bit more when we start discussing combat in more detail, but for now, that's the basics of what you need to know to make a character in Savage Worlds.